Hey, Chandler Crouch here. This is the most exciting video you will ever see on real estate homestead exemption forms in Texas. In this video, we're going to cover the benefits you get by filing your homestead, what happens if you forget the deadlines, you forget to file. I'm going to go over what those deadlines are, and I'm going to show you exactly how to fill out the form. Let's get started. Before we get too far, I just want to tell you, you can find the homestead exemption form and a lot of the resources I talk about in this video on our website at chandlercrouch.com/homestead. There are many benefits to filing a homestead exemption on your property. One benefit is that you're taxed on $25,000 less of property value, meaning this: if you have a $300,000 home, you're only going to pay taxes on $275,000 of that property. Or if you have a $200,000 home, you're only going to pay taxes on $175,000 of that property. Also, the taxable value is capped out at a maximum increase of 10% per year. That means if last year you had a $300,000 house and then the market value of your property went up to $350,000, you wouldn't have to pay taxes on $350,000. Your taxable value would cap out at a 10% gain, which would be $330,000. It's a great benefit. Your timing matters when you file a homestead exemption. You're not going to qualify for the homestead until you've lived there for January 1st of that year, okay? So if you bought a house last year, you didn't qualify for a homestead exemption last year until after January 1st of this year. Now's the time to file your homestead exemption. You want to try and get that homestead exemption filed before April 30th. That way you can see the reduction of on your tax bill when your tax bill shows up in October or sometime around there. The good news is if you bought your house but you forgot to file your homestead exemption, you can still file your homestead exemption late. You can actually get a refund check from the tax assessor for up to 1 year retroactively for the amount of money that you would have saved if you would have filed your homestead exemption on time. You don't want to press it, but that's a nice little safety net there for you that I want to tell you about. Not every property qualifies. I already mentioned you have to live there on January 1st, but it also has to be your primary residence. Also, your driver's license and the property address must match so that you can't end up filing your homestead on multiple properties at one time. So as long as you just have your homestead filed on one property, it's your primary residence, you should be good to go. You need to know that the homestead exemption is not the only exemption that exists. There's an over 65 exemption that's really good. Also, there's a special over 65 exemption that allows you to defer the tax payments so that they're paid out of your estate after you pass away, or it puts it on your heirs so your heirs have to pay it. That's an interesting one. Also, there are exemptions for veterans, disabled persons. There are exemptions for surviving spouses, all sorts of stuff. Those are for different videos. You just need to know that they exist. Let's fill out the homestead exemption form. The first thing you want to do is put the county name at the top of the form. Tarrant is what I put because I'm in Tarrant County. Absolutely select that you own and live in the property as your primary residence, and that's the residence you're seeking as your homestead exemption. Select yes right here. Scrolling down, you want to select which exemption you're applying for. For the purposes of this video, we're just doing the general residential homestead exemption. Scrolling down, we've got some other options that aren't gonna apply to most people. So we're just gonna skip those and just go right here to where you fill out all the information about the homeowner. So if you're single or married, obviously you want to check the appropriate selection. An entity such as an LLC or a corporation can't actually file a homestead exemption because an entity can't occupy the property as their primary residence. So this has got to be a person's name. Something really neat here: if you use your actual birth date, the real birth date, then what will happen is when you qualify for your over 65 exemption, most counties will actually automatically qualify you and apply that over 65 exemption to your property. You don't have to refile any paperwork. So let's move on down here. I highly recommend putting your best email address in the blank so that you can make sure to get any notifications they're going to send out. This is where the section 3 is about the property. This is where you put the information that's going to allow you to recapture any funds that you would have saved if you would have filed years back. Okay, so if you bought the house last year and you just lived there for the first time on January 1st this year, this was the first January 1st that you lived there this year, then you're not going to get any kind of retroactive benefit. You have to have lived there on January 1st of that year. And so, but if you've owned the house for 2-3 years and you didn't file your property tax exemption, then want to make sure, put the date you purchased the property, the date you began occupying this property as your principal residence, and those dates are the dates that will allow you to get any kind of retroactive benefit. I know Tarrant County gives you 1 year retroactive. I saw somewhere in the tax code they allow you to file back 2 years, but I think that maybe the way the dates work out, you're only going to get a refund for 1 year. So obviously the physical address there, legal description, you don't have to put that. If it's a manufactured home, you've got to put all sorts of other information. Here's model number, ID number. And we're going to scroll down here and look at this waiver of required documentation. I think that the most common selection here, if this applies to you, is if you're an active duty military veteran, whatever. If you're a spouse, somebody that's a service member, then that may apply to you. We just keep scrolling down here. This is all really basic stuff. You're just going to sign the form, make sure and put your title there as the owner, and sign here. And also, you're gonna have to provide a little bit of documentation, nothing too harsh, just your driver's license. And again, your driver's license address has to match the address on this form. That's really all there is to it, but I do have a few frequently asked questions that I'd like to go over. The most common question is, do I have to refile this thing every year? And the answer is no. However, you should proceed with caution. If the appraisal district gets some mail that's undeliverable to the address, to the property address, they may assume that you moved and that address isn't receiving your mail anymore, and so they can automatically revoke that homestead exemption without even telling you about it. Or maybe they'll tell you, but if you're not receiving mail there, how would you ever find out? So if you notice a dramatic spike in your tax bill, I would definitely look to see if your homestead exemption is still there. Also, there are other things that can cause your homestead exemption to just automatically be canceled. One of them is if you refinance your house, if you get married, get divorced, if you're doing some estate planning, and you put your home into a trust, anything that affects the name or on your deed or any kind of deed records at all, even if it doesn't affect your qualifying ability to qualify for a homestead exemption, it could cause the appraisal district to automatically revoke your homestead exemption. I think that's entirely unfair and it should be illegal, but that's the way the system is. So no, you don't have to file every year, but be on guard and check that out. Another question I hear from time to time is, do I have to live in the house like every day out of the year? The answer is no. You can spend the night at your friend's house or have sleepovers or go on vacation or, I don't know how sleepovers really play into it, but whatever. You can hop in an RV and take off for months at a time. I've even read that you can take basically like an extended vacation up to 2 years, as long as you don't exceed that 2-year mark. And the big kicker here is, as long as your primary residence does not change, you don't change the address on your driver's license, then you should be good to go. Still, with that being said, if they have any reason to believe that your mail is not being delivered, or if they think that your house is not your primary residence, they can just revoke that homestead exemption and you'll have to refile. So I would take a look at it if you've been gone for a long time, just to verify. You may want to check some of that stuff out if you're planning an extended trip. Now, here's a word of caution. If you haven't ever filled out a homestead exemption form and sent it in, then you may look on the website and see that there's a homestead exemption already on the house. Now, you got to stop and know this, that the homestead exemption from the previous owner could be showing up there, and that thing could fall off and you would lose your homestead protection. In fact, that's not even your homestead protection. That's the homestead protection for the last guy, but those records don't update instantaneously. It's done on a yearly basis. It's according to who lived there on January 1st. So if you see that the homestead exemption's filed, but you know you haven't filed one, or even just to be safe, it doesn't hurt to go ahead and file that paperwork to make sure your homestead exemption is on file for your property. You get the benefits for that. One question I get when people are filling out that form is what name to put as the owner name. And it sounds simple, but if you're married or you have some kind of joint ownership situation, the way the form reads, it can be a little bit confusing. My best advice is to go to the appraisal district website, look up your property, and look to see how they list the owner name. And then what I would do is I would match exactly how they have the name written on their website, match it exactly just to make sure that they accept the form. If you want to change the way the name appears on the website, that's a different process altogether. And so you can go down that path too. But as far as getting the homestead exemption reforms accepted, I would just do exactly what they have there. The last question I'm going to cover here is what happens to the money sitting in your escrow account if you haven't filed a homestead exemption for quite a while. All of a sudden you file one and now your taxable burden has decreased, but you've got all this money that's saved up in your escrow account to pay your property taxes. What's going to happen to all that extra money? Well, that's great news for you. It's kind of like getting an income tax refund. If you've paid too much into the government, then at the end of the year, when you file your taxes, you're going to get a refund check. Same thing happens with your escrow account. If you've been saving up money in your escrow account for your property taxes, you file your homestead exemption, so then at the end of the year when that tax bill comes, the bill sent to your mortgage company is a lot less than what they anticipated. They're only allowed to hold so much money in that escrow account, so they may send it back to you in the form of an escrow surplus payment. And so just have fun, throw a party. I'm just kidding. You might want to save that money, just kind of be cautious with it. Put it in a savings account or something, just because the valuation's going to come again. And I don't know, there could be things. I'm just paranoid. Just save your money, all right? Just save it. Don't spend it. Don't blow it. I'm just kidding. Have fun. Go Cowboys. See you later. Thanks for watching the video.